Hello and welcome to Superintendent's Corner. I'm your host, Marnie Ryan. Today on the program, I have the wonderful opportunity of interviewing the Superintendent of USD 305, Mr. Bill Hall. Hello, Bill. How are you?
Hi, Marnie. How are you today?
I'm good. I am so glad to have you here.
I appreciate you inviting me to come on the show and share some good information to our patrons about 305.
Yes. Well, I know that we have a lot of really cool stuff to talk about, but if you don't mind,
Sure.
Could we just have a little backstory about you and what brought you to Salina?
Absolutely. Well, this is my third year as Superintendent of Schools here in Salina, USD 305. Actually, I've been in education for 32 years, and interestingly, this wasn't my first opportunity to come to Salina. I lived in Salina back in 1991 as an assistant principal at Sacred Heart High School, and that was my first year in administration. But actually, I'm from Dodge City originally, born and raised. Spent the last 16 years as superintendent of schools in Ulysses, USD 214 out in southwestern Kansas. Actually, when I graduated from Dodge High School, went to school at St. Mary of the Plains College, had a bachelor's degree in history, and taught for about 8 years in a small community just east of Dodge, Spearville. Decided I wanted to go into administration, so I did my master's work at Fort Hays State. I received my master's in educational administration, and as I said, I had my first administrative job here in Salina. Since that time, I was out in Atwood for 4 years as a high school principal, again in Ulysses, and then found my way back here. So it's just a utter joy to be able to come back to Salina. It's a beautiful community, and it's a lot of support from our patrons and parents, and so I appreciate being here.
You know, one of the things that I think is so awesome, as a parent, you know, my daughter is in USD 305. I see you at all kinds of events, not just at my daughter's school, but just, you know, throughout the different things in the community, you know, with Access we tape things, but I always see you at events. That's so awesome.
Well, I appreciate that, Marnie, and actually that's the most enjoyable part of this position is the opportunity to go out, visit with students, find out what's going on in their schools, just see some of the unbelievable talented kids that we have in all of our schools here in 305. I'm just totally amazed. And then really just an opportunity. Oftentimes I'll go out to the elementary schools and just be around the kids, visit with the teachers, have an opportunity maybe to have lunch. I just had lunch with a group of kids at Houston Elementary on Friday. And I oftentimes say, you know, when I really want to find out what's going on, I have a conversation with some of those second and third graders because they will be absolutely honest with how things are happening. But I thoroughly enjoy it. I enjoy attending activities and events and just visiting with kids. That's the most enjoyable part of the position. So.
What do you think in your time in the 3 years, would you say in your little visits with the schools, what has been some of the most interesting things you've heard kids say?
Well, you know, it's kind of interesting. One of the things that they found out really quickly was that with some kindergarten kids, I had an opportunity to visit with them and I had to share with them, the teacher, it was kind of like a career day type thing, and the teacher wanted me to come in and share with them what exactly the superintendent does. And imagine 5-year-olds now, they have a difficult time even saying superintendent. So just to share with them, and so to really bring home to them you know, what a superintendent is or what a superintendent does, I said, now, do you know when it gets bad out, and we have bad weather days, you know, what happens if we can't go to school? Well, they call a snow day. I said, well, I'm that guy. And then it dawned on them, we could see the lights going off that, oh, you're the guy that calls no school days. So that really brought home a lot of meaning to the kids in terms of what the superintendent does. But beyond that, you know, kids say the darndest things. You know, they're very, very honest, and they'll share with you good things. And I have yet to have a student tell me that they don't feel like their teacher's a good teacher. They all have said, well, I've got the best teacher in Salina. So it's always fun talking to kids and visiting with them, and then even high school kids. Because high school kids, I mean, they'll be very honest with you in terms of things that are going well and things that can be improved. And so, you know, I appreciate the opportunity to meet with every one of them.
That's so awesome. Yes. Well, I know that USD 305 has some pretty big stuff coming up in the future election, I believe in April. There's a bond issue that's coming up. Would you mind telling us a bit about that? And I know because, like I said, I am a parent and I got this wonderful information sheet, but we just want to take maybe an opportunity to share with the community just maybe a little more about what exactly is this bond issue and how it affects our community and most importantly, our students.
Absolutely, and that's the most important part of this, the impact that this could have on our students, because I need to really share that information. And you know, back in December 10th of 2013 at the December board meeting, the board did approve the bond resolution, and essentially what that was is it called the election. And basically they gave permission to place this issue on the ballot. And this will be in the amount of $110,700,000. And so it's going to be on the April 8th ballot. It's going to be a mail-in election, you know, which is extremely important to the Board of Education because they want to get as many people involved with this, in this process as possible. And gosh, a mail ballot, it's just as simple as it can be. As long as you're registered to vote, you'll get it in the mail, you cast your ballot, you put it back in the mailbox, and you're finished. And so hopefully we'll get really good turnout. But that's kind of where we are now. There's a lot of history that brought us to this point. When I first came back in 2011, the board had one of the goals that, and actually it was one of the questions during my interview, was the completion of a comprehensive facilities plan. And when I came on board in July of 2011, the board had already hired an outside consultant to complete that plan, and this plan was presented to the board in October of 2011. And we sat down and we looked at that. It's been a better part of a year just analyzing that plan, talking about all the facility needs of USD 305 now and well into the future. And a little bit of history even past that. The last bond election for USD 305 was in 1998. It was a $98 million bond issue. And I did some research right when I came in 2011 just to research that particular process. What I found interesting is in the presentation that was made to the Board of Education by the group, it is known as Creating the Future, they shared with the board that even back in '98, if that particular bond issue was placed on the ballot, and even if the voters in Saline County and USD 305 approved that issue, that it still would not resolve all the facility needs that we had at that point in time. That at some point, and probably within 5 to 7 years, we would have to come back to the community for a subsequent bond election. And so fast forward 15 years later, and we haven't been back to the community yet. And some of those needs that were there in '98 are still there today. So the board looked at that comprehensive facilities plan and identified a number of priorities that we need to address. Now, these aren't in any particular rank order, but one of the issues, a top priority is the need for all-day kindergarten. We are one of the few districts, I believe there's only 13 districts in the state of Kansas out of 286 school districts who currently do not offer full-day kindergarten services in any of our schools. And the primary reason for that for us has been the lack of adequate space. So this particular bond issue would address that need. In addition to that, the board also established as a priority the need to repair structural issues at South High and renovate and upgrade Central High. Most folks have already are aware of the fact that South High has structural issues. South High was built in 1970, but there are some structural issues that have emerged and just didn't stand the test of time. We're seeing things such as cracking walls and floors, or walls separating from floors, sinking floors, things of that nature, and then just the overall design just is not conducive to a positive education environment. So there's some things we need to address at South High, and then at Central is just more need for upgrades. Central High was Salina High School back in 1952 when it was built, and it has stood the test of time. I mean, that particular building is solid and structurally sound, but it's more in terms of upgrades. We need to do some upgrades to our theater department, our upgrades to our video or visual and fine arts department, upgrade our science rooms, upgrade our FACS and current tech ed. And so there are some areas that we need to upgrade there as well. Then the other two areas that the board focused on was school safety and security in terms of having controlled entry points and storm shelters. And then the last one was career and tech ed opportunities, providing more opportunities for our high school students for career training. So those were the priorities. We went to the community and first through the work of a vision team. There were about 35 community individuals that were appointed to be part of this team, and they worked throughout the summer on what these plans would look like. Took it to the community. We had a number of community meetings. I believe 4 different community meetings had input, and we had this interactive response system where we ask questions and the people in the audience can respond back. Gosh, we had over 300 plus folks attending those. Plus we did a number of surveys as well. And the net effect of all this then is we took these plans from the community and we're now presenting it to the community back in the form of a formal bond election April 8th.
That is awesome. You know, it surprises me that you said about the all-day kindergarten. I just, you know, I guess I say that because, you know, not being a native Kansan or Salinan, I say this a lot, but I'm so very impressed when I moved here. Salina is such a unique community. I always say it's such a big, small town, if you will. And how the community really seems to embrace everyone, especially the young people. And to me, it surprises me in such a positive way how cutting edge, maybe that's not the right phrase, but Salina, you know, in terms of art and just being rather progressive and forward thinking. And so I'm kind of shocked when you said that we're one of the few that doesn't have all-day kindergarten. It's just, wow, you know?
Yeah, and given Salina's reputation, USD 305's reputation, it is somewhat surprising, but the limiting factor has just been the need for space. For us to be able to do that, we would have to add at least 2 additional classrooms onto each elementary school. And so 2 times 8, that's 16 additional classrooms that we would have to add on in order to accommodate a full day of kindergarten. And so that's been the challenge for us.
And you know, and like I said, you know, my own child is in 305, and you know, even though ironically, when she was in kindergarten, it was she was in one of the smaller classes, and you know, and she I don't believe has ever had too big of a class size issue, but I know that I can't imagine, or I can see, I guess maybe that's the better way to say it, the challenge of not having this space, because even though her class was smaller, I think maybe when she started kindergarten, she had, I think maybe 17 kids, and then I think it did end up growing to like 20 or 21, you know, and that really to me doesn't seem very small, though I'm not an educator by any means, but I can see where that would be such a challenge, is how do you facilitate that? Sure. Well, we have to have this bond issue. We have to have the money, you know, because how else are we going to do it? It's not going to come from the sky, sadly.
Well, exactly. Well, and I think the point being, too, is that each one of our elementary schools, for the most part, has 2 sections or has 4 sections of kindergarten, a morning and an afternoon, times 2 teachers. And so if we were to make it a full day of kindergarten, we have to have 4 classrooms instead of 2. And so it just doubles the space. It's kind of interesting because research absolutely supports the need for all-day kindergarten. I've seen, and both from research as well as from an experiential standpoint, I've had the opportunity to implement a full-day kindergarten program. And really seeing the students that are in a half-day program and comparing those students to students who have a full day of kindergarten, they're so much more, the kids in the full day are so much more developmentally ready for first grade.
Really?
And it's not about teaching more, it's about having more time to teach and to allow those students to develop even further than they would otherwise. So it's absolutely a necessity. And it's interesting because the governor, in his recent State of the State just a week or so back, has placed all the funding of all-day kindergarten into his budget. Now that's a little bit different than what we're asking. We're asking for bond monies for the construction of the facilities. The governor, on the other hand, is looking at funding it from a state standpoint on the operational side, because not only will we need additional classroom space, we will need additional teachers as well. If the governor's proposal goes through and is adopted by the legislature, then the dollars will be there a few years down the road to help pay for the teachers as well. So for us, if approved by the voters, it couldn't be more perfect timing.
Well, that is just like amazing.
It's exciting. It's exciting. It's exciting.
I bet, yeah. Now, you know, and you talked about, too, in addition to, you know, the all-day kindergarten, the structural issues, you know, like, for example, with South High. I know there's been times when, you know, it's so interesting when, you know, on career days or different things when I've gone to speak at South High. And it is a very unique building. It's funny because I try not to get lost at South High, but I tell you the great thing about South High is if you just keep on walking, you eventually will end up back where you started.
You'll find yourself. You can't be lost. You'll eventually find yourself.
Yes, yes. But it is interesting just in the design, and it took a little bit to get used to how there really aren't any actual walls. And it amazes me how the young people learn in that environment, you know, and I've asked some students and they say, you know, when you're a freshman, the first day or two, it just takes a little bit to get used to, but then it's no big deal. But, and I know that's maybe not the issue, it's just, you know, maybe some of the cracks and so forth, and but it's just an interesting building to me. It's just, I've never seen a school like that.
It is, and I, you know, I mentioned I graduated from Dodge High in 1978, and I often tell this story when I'm out and visiting with community groups, but the fact that I graduated in '78 is not important, but my senior year, I was on the debate team, and we actually attended a debate tournament at South High. And that would have been when South High was 8 years old. And I was enthralled. I mean, a high school senior, and of course I'm coming from a school that was built in 1921 or something like that. And I was just amazed at the building, the structure, the design. I just hadn't seen anything quite like it. You know, and at that time it was considered one of the premier high schools in the state of Kansas for the design and the newness of it as well. But you know, again, fast forward to 43 years, and it just hasn't stood the test of time. And interestingly, you should mention about the design concept itself and the open classrooms. I was out at South High a few weeks ago and was doing a presentation for sophomore English classes, and I really literally was standing in the middle of the classroom, and there were kids around me, and I felt like I had to yell to be heard. And I know when I raised my voice, then I know that the teacher next to me on both sides also raised their voice. And then about that time, somebody turned the video on a few classrooms down, and we were all competing for the same. And I asked the kids, I said, how do you do this? And I said, oh, we get used to it, but it would be very, very difficult for me. And I think when you're in that environment, you know that it's not the best environment that's most conducive to learning. And so that is a challenge for us, besides the structural issues. I mean, the structural issues are the issues as well. And part of the plan that the vision team put forth and that the community basically gave us feedback on that the bond issue will provide would be to basically replace the instructional pods, the round circular pods, over a phased-in approach in 3 to 5 years. One of the questions that was asked is, well, the kids obviously want to know, okay, I guess no school for 3 years? Well, no, we're going to have school. But they asked, okay, where will we be going to school, and what will happen there? What we plan on doing is that we would start with one pod, and we would raise that pod, and while construction's going on there, we would cordon off the other two. And we'd have to bring in some portable classrooms during the construction. And so the portable classrooms and the existing pods will accommodate the students. And then one by one, once that first pod's completed, we'd open that back up, move the kids there, and do the same thing to a second pod, and then eventually to the third. So it'll be a 3 to 5 year process to complete the whole project. It will be a 2-story structure, is what's being proposed. And then it will also be more traditional. Like I say, no circles, more squares and rectangles, I guess. But more the traditional classroom setting.
Now, did I read this correctly? Yes, multi-purpose rooms as tornado shelters. That is a really good idea.
Well, I tell you, interestingly, and we surveyed the community. We utilized a patron insight, which is a phone survey, and we asked them specifically about school safety and security. And 72 to 74% of our patrons came back and said, absolutely, this is important to us, both the security side and the safety side. And when we start talking safety side, we're talking about storm shelters. And it was just, almost a year ago now, where we had the tornadoes hit Moore, Oklahoma, and had devastated loss of life there. I know there were several elementary schools impacted by that. And our community understands that. And they're saying, it's important that we have qualified storm shelters for our schools. And so part of this proposal would have storm shelters in there, but they're not just standalone storm shelters. They are facilities that will be used for something else, for educational purposes during the day. But they're going to be constructed in such a manner that they will be qualified storm shelters, able to withstand winds and flying objects of 250 miles per hour. So that's one thing that came back from our community, very, very positive. They feel very strongly about that.
Well, that's it seems like a no-brainer, if you will, being in Kansas and considering, Chapman and Greensburg and all that really wasn't that's not that far from us, and it wasn't really that long ago, and we at Access, we even lost one of our old satellite dishes, I mean, which pales in comparison to Moore, Oklahoma. But it is interesting that, it's just one of those things I guess you kind of take for granted until something happens. And of course you want to be prepared. And again, I keep on referencing my daughter, but it's so funny at the beginning of the year, new classroom, new teacher, she talked to me about, their emergency plan, where they go, and then she's like, Mom, we all fit in the bathroom.
Right.
And she was very enthralled in that, very interested.
Right, and right now, as far as our tornado shelters are concerned, we basically shelter the students with what we have available, which primarily is hallways, and in some cases, the classrooms themselves, and so we make do with what we have. And what are the odds? I mean, gosh, I would never ever want to be a betting person in terms of when we might be impacted by a potential tornado.
Oh, definitely.
But we are in the middle of Tornado Alley. It's not unusual for Kansas to be considered part of this. So from that standpoint, I think our community is very smart in telling us, you need to look at this. This is important to us.
Definitely. Now, I know that you said that you had over 300 people show up at these meetings and giving, sharing input and so forth. What would you say are some of the questions that people have? Maybe because I know you sent out, like, for example, I know this because at Access, we air the school board meetings, and so we've heard a lot about it. And you guys have sent out this flyer. But still, what are some of the questions you guys kind of hear in the community?
Well, some of the questions we've had. I mean, there's been some questions related to South High School about going back and building back on that particular site. And I've assured folks we've had a number of geotechnical surveys who came out and they've surveyed the soil compaction and the structure, and we've had a number of meetings with engineers, and our engineers are telling us you absolutely can build on that site. There's nothing wrong with that site. We need to make sure from a preparation standpoint that it's done correctly. And so we have things in place that we're going to be doing that, but as far as building back there, we're fine doing that. That's not an issue. So that seems to be one question that came up. Cost is another question that comes up when we talk about financial side of it. We are currently paying off bonds from the 1998 bond election. Those will be due to be paid off in 2018. But what's interesting is with this particular bond election, if approved by the voters in April, it will result in it's a 4.7 mil increase. But folks will say, well, what's a mil? It's very difficult for folks to understand what a mil is. And so they're like, just tell me how much it's going to cost me, in terms of dollars and cents. So for the owner of a home that's appraised at $100,000, it'll be an increase in taxes of $4.50 a month.
That's nothing.
Yeah, exactly. For that amount, when we're talking the amount of changes and additions and corrections that we need to make, at $110.7 million for $4.50 a month, that's basically a cup of coffee.
Yeah, definitely.
So from that standpoint, it's a really good thing. So.
Yes, completely. And you definitely feel, I mean, I know all of this came about from the input from the community, but after, these specific needs are planned out, have you found a lot of support from the community members about this?
Absolutely. When we laid out the needs for them, as I shared with you just now, I've heard very little, if any, negative whatsoever. I haven't had anyone come up and say, we just don't get it. They've said, we understand the need, we get it, we understand the need for all-day K, we understand that we have to take care of South High and we have to upgrade Central, we understand the need for school safety and security, and we understand the need for additional career and tech ed opportunities for our kids, especially those that we want to provide opportunities to keep kids here in Salina, because there's great jobs right here in Salina that pay very, very well. And many of our kids don't understand that they don't have to go very far from home to get a good paying job. So all those needs are really accepted and understood by our community. About the only thing that we've heard is is now the right time. From a financial standpoint, is now the right time. And we responded with that with some interesting data, because absolutely we believe that now is absolutely the right time for a number of reasons. First and foremost, we have interest rates that are beginning to increase. We have construction costs that are beginning to increase. So the longer we wait, the more expensive it becomes. But one of the most important elements of this is the fact that right now the state of Kansas will pay 27% of the total cost of this bond election, because we receive 27% of state aid. The state legislature, each year that they come into session, they talk about doing away with that. And if we were to wait and the state does away with that in the future, then if and when this does pass in the future, then the entire cost and the entire burden of this project will fall upon our local taxpayers. So right now, while the state of Kansas will pay almost a third of the total cost, this is absolutely the right time to do that. So all the folks are very supportive for the need. They understand completely, and the why now is extremely important, that we move forward now and that we not wait.
What would happen if, let's say this does pass, as we hope it does in April, and maybe next year, the following year or two, the state legislature changes. What happens then? Has that come up in conversation?
It hasn't. I mean, from a legal standpoint, if our voters approve this bond election based upon the idea that currently the state of Kansas will pay 27% of the cost of that, and then our voters pass it under that premise, and then 2 years down the road, the state legislature says, we're not going to do this anymore. Then from a legal standpoint, that would be very deceptive to our voters, to present this concept, this issue to them under one set of standards and then change it. So at that point in time, it'd be a very legalistic argument for them to do that. So they can't go back and make it retroactive. So as long as the voters, as long as we had state funding in place at the time that the bond issue was approved, then we're fine as far as moving forward, and that would be during the life of the bond issue.
Awesome.
Now, this particular one would be a 20 mil bond issue, and so we would start the payment. As I said, the first 5 years we pay off the existing bond indebtedness, and then roll out the remaining 15 years after that. So, but it would be a total payback of 20 years.
I think that sounds very realistic.
Well,
I mean, I know, I mean, it would seem, like that's the thing I should say, because, you're on the program, I asked you to come on, and so forth, but it really does. I mean, as a parent, who has a child in USD 305, I think I can't see the negative side to it. Education, children are our future. It is so worth it. I guess my point is sometimes it's some of the small things that make such a difference in the children's education. And why would you not want to further enhance the opportunity, keep them safe? I mean, I just can't imagine the negative to it. I just can't see why.
Well, and I appreciate that, and I agree, Marna, because when you start talking about the impact that this will have on kids, I mean, every one of these needs will have a direct impact on students, whether it be the all-day K, the additional career tech ed opportunities for kids, the upgrades and fixing the structural issues at South High, every one of them, and at Central High, every one of them impacts students, you know, so there's nothing here that doesn't directly impact students. School safety and security. Under school security, whereas we're talking storm shelters under safety, under security, we're looking at controlled entry points, just to make sure that right now all of our doors are secure except for the primary one. And when under controlled entry, we would create a barrier so that when school starts, all traffic is funneled through the office because we have to be able to know who's in any of our schools at any given time.
Yeah.
And that's school security. So all the needs directly impact students, which is a positive thing. But beyond that, you know, one of the things that we're looking at is what can we do to continue to encourage families to move to Salina? That we have a great community here, and we do. We have a great community with unbelievable support. But I absolutely believe that the condition of our schools and the progressivism of our school system is a direct indicator toward economic development of our community. And so from that standpoint, this is more of an investment. It's an investment into our local community for now and well into the future to encourage folks to come to Salina. Because we have a beautiful community with a great school system.
Yes, yes. Now, as far as school safety, is it fair to say that I think Salina has been very blessed in the fact that we have not had, I can't really recall by memory, hardly any issues concerning school safety, but of course you want to be prepared, you know, because like, you know, you don't want to not be and then heaven forbid something happen.
Absolutely.
But I do know, and it is interesting that you mentioned about the entry points. Just in my years at Access and going to the schools for different various reasons, I can't recall the reason why, but I remember a coworker and I had to go to a school and it was the Red Cross Heroes Breakfast, the South High football team.
Yes,
you know, they were nominated.
Yes.
And I remember I was like, oh yeah, we can enter here. The door was locked. And I totally understand why. I'm like, it used to not be a few years ago, but you know, it makes perfect sense.
Well,
because anybody could enter at any time. And you know, those are your kids.
Well, it does, Marnie, and I tell you what, it's not like when you and I went to school. You know, things are different. Things are just different now.
Yeah.
And so we have to do everything we can proactively to ensure that our students and our staff are safe at all times. Now, that's with the controlled entry point, and even with the controlled entry point, even the fact that we still have one door that's unlocked, the primary one, you know, in a number of our buildings, we don't have regular sight view of that particular door, so folks can still, so we have to be very vigilant in terms of who's coming in and out of our schools. Controlled entry would resolve that, but we're doing that from a facility standpoint. Now, even with that, we're still doing things that doesn't require facilities to make sure that our students are safe and secure. And give an example, and we had, prior to the show, you and I were just visiting a bit, but we do have procedures in place at all of our schools. We have building crisis plans. We have a district emergency operations plan. We have procedures in place to take care of crises that may occur from time to time. And we obviously hope that they never happen, but we have to be prepared.
Yeah.
You know, we have evacuation drills, and we have lockdown drills in place. We have alternate sites located for our kids. So we're doing some things procedurally to make sure that our students are safe and secure at all times. And we will continue to do those things. We're going to do everything we can within our power to ensure that we have proper procedures and protocols in place. And we've also had a good conversation just within the last year, develop partnerships with our local emergency medical providers, with the local law enforcement, with Saline County Emergency Management and Hannah Stanball's office. And they've been very, very helpful and really encouraging to us and saying, you know, this is really not just a school district issue, this is a community issue. And so we want to be your partners in this. And so I really appreciate their help and their support to make these things happen. So aside from the controlled entry, which is extremely important, and the storm shelters, which also are extremely important, we're still doing everything we can on a daily basis to ensure that our students and staff are safe every single day that school is in session.
Definitely. Now I hate asking this, but I feel like I have to. What is going to happen, or what would be the challenge if the bond, heaven forbid, does not pass? How does 305, I guess, combat these issues? Because you have to deal with these issues. Don't go away.
It is. You're absolutely right.
How does it work?
That's a good question, Marnie, and that's something that I think we need to be realistic about. But you know, for instance, all-day kindergarten. If something happens that this bond issue doesn't pass, you know, and the governor's came out and he's looking at funding it, and if the legislature were to approve his proposal, and his particular proposal would take 5 years to implement. So again, from our standpoint, from a timing standpoint, it would work out perfectly. But let's just say that our voters don't approve this, and the legislature does approve funding. It would put our school system in the very unenviable position of not having the facilities to adequately have all-day K, and yet the state of Kansas is telling us, hey, we'll pay for it. You know, and so it's a difficult issue. So what would we do in that situation? Well, you know, we would have to somehow create the space. And about the only way that we could do that would be possibly bringing in portable classrooms in our elementary schools. I know that's not something that we really want to do. I know that's something that our parents really isn't a favorite with our parents, but it may be the only option we have to be able to create the space that we need to add all-day kindergarten to our elementary schools. Or it's possible that we may have to utilize spaces that traditionally aren't considered instructional spaces, like hallways and storage rooms, to create additional learning spaces to be able to house all-day K. Or it might be that we have to eliminate elective programs, if necessary, to accommodate all-day K. So none of those are good scenarios. You know, it's just going to create a very, very difficult situation if we don't have the space that we can build to do this. It's just it's going to impact other programs. Or, as I said, you know, security issues if we have to bring in outside classrooms. So that's that situation. The other needs, for instance, structural issues at South High, that's too big of a fix. I mean, we don't have the internal resources to resolve that issue. It's not like we can call up maintenance and say, you know, we got a wall that's cracking and we got structural issues and part of the foundation is settling, just get over there and take care of it. You know, it's a big fix, and so without the bond issue passing, there's no way that we can take care of South High or the renovations to Central High either, which would include the renovations to the auditorium, the Visual Arts Center, the Current Tech Ed at either of the two schools, the science rooms at Central High. None of those things would be able to be taken care of. The controlled entry, we might be able to do a little bit of that, but it's going to have to be over a multi-year basis, so we obviously aren't going to be able to do it as quickly. It might take several years to be able to accomplish that. But ultimately, if it doesn't pass, you know, we're going to have to reevaluate it and probably come back to the community because, as you said yourself, these are needs that aren't going to go away.
Definitely.
You know, and so, you know, if that were to happen, we'd have to reevaluate it.
Wow. Well, you know, again, it's very well presented in how you have shared today, but even too, just the flyer that you guys sent out, and even on the on USD 305's website. I mean, there's no sneaky little agenda. I mean, it's just clearly for the kids.
Right.
And I just cannot see personally, again, as a parent of someone who goes to the USD 305, regardless of whether she goes to South or Central, you know, in a couple of years, this is important. And I just really do hope that people do, you know, see this and understand this isn't just, you know, the school district just wanting more money. No, this is for the kids. This benefits their learning, and this stuff matters.
Sure.
Kids need to feel safe. They need to feel that they have proper space. You know, crowded. I mean, we've heard for years, and I know I'm preaching to the choir. I'm sure just about overcrowded classrooms and all that. And so, what a great way to help. You know, to help, I don't want to say remedy the problem, but to help be a positive in a potentially negative situation at such a minimal cost to our community.
When you start looking at $4.50 a month for the owner of a home appraised at $100,000, it just doesn't seem like that much of an increase.
No, not at all.
And you know, and interesting, when the Vision Committee started having these conversations, one of the things that was very, very important to them when they started looking at these was to make sure that we had equality of opportunity in all of our schools, meaning that in really several different ways. Equality of opportunity, whether you're South High or Central High or South Middle or Lakewood, but also equality of opportunity from the standpoint that it doesn't matter where you live in this community. It doesn't matter what background you come from. Every student deserves an equal opportunity for success.
Definitely.
And this particular proposal addresses that need for equal opportunity. I had mentioned that our two middle schools, and Lakewood Middle School came out of the 1998 bond issue. So that was really a pretty new school, but the only thing that would need to happen at Lakewood would be controlled entry, as I mentioned, and then a multi-purpose room that would double as a storm shelter. But other than that, that's it. South Middle has a bit more of a challenge because they lack the gym space that Lakewood has, and so part of that would be a gymnasium at South Middle, because we still have students at South Middle who practice and don't get home until 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night because they just don't have the gym space. So we're doing everything we can to address the equality of opportunity, and that was something that went into the Vision team's planning and also was shared with the community that we believe to be very, very important. But you're absolutely right. I mean, all the needs that were laid out are extremely important to the future success of our students here in Salina.
Definitely, definitely. Well, I just can't imagine, again, I know I just kind of said that, but I just can't imagine why this wouldn't be considered a positive to people in the community. I mean, I guess I can say I'm biased, but not really. I mean, the great thing about voting is you can check yes or no, but I just can't imagine why people would say no. This is such a positive. And again, like you just stated, and we talked about this numerous times, it does the cost versus the benefit. The cost is just so minor, period. And it's just such a good issue. And I don't know. I hope that we, the morning of April 9th, or I guess the evening of April 8th, we at that evening, I hope we all have great smiles on our faces. We cheer and say, yes, hooray.
Well, that is a nice segue, because I think it's important that we visit with our community a little bit about the election process. As I shared with you, the Board of Education, part of the responsibility of the board is to determine the date of the election and the method of election and the amount. And in this particular case, they said as a method of election, a mail ballot. Now, a mail ballot hasn't been done in Saline County for quite some time, if ever. I think it's been quite a few years since that's happened. But that was extremely important to the Board of Education because of the fact that I think at our last school board election, would have been a year ago, last April, I think we had 12% turnout. And the board thought about that, and they're like, this is such an important issue. It's an important issue to our students. It's an important issue to our community and the entire school district. This is something that we need, if we can do anything to promote involvement and engagement, we need to do that. And that's when the board said, we need to make this a mail ballot, because if by making it a mail ballot, it will encourage more folks to be part of this process, to get engaged, to listen to the conversation, and to cast a vote, then we need to do that. And so consequently, they did make this a mail ballot. Now there's a few dates that are extremely important for our community, because right now our push within the school system is to get as many people engaged as possible, and that's just from the standpoint of getting them registered. And we are really encouraging our staff, we're encouraging our parents, we're encouraging all patrons to please, if you're not registered, please get registered to vote. Now the deadline to get registered to vote to receive a mail ballot is March 7th.
March 7th.
And so if they are registered by March 7th, then they will receive a ballot in the mail, and it's just a very simple, open up the ballot, everything's paid, the mail's paid going, the mail's paid back to the county clerk's office. All you have to do is fill out the ballot and put it in the mailbox. So we're encouraging everyone, please get registered. The ballot should be mailed by March 24th, so folks will be receiving the ballots around the 25th or 26th of March, and they can fill it out immediately upon receiving it. They don't have to wait until April 8th. We just need to make sure that all completed ballots are in the county clerk's office by noon on April 8th. So we're telling folks that if you don't have it mailed by the Thursday prior, like April 4th, April 3rd, you might want to just walk it into the county clerk's office, because you don't want to take a chance that it gets hung up in the mail and it shows up late, because if it's after noon on April 8th, then it will not be counted as part of the bond election. So just encouraging as many people as possible, please be part of the process.
Definitely. And again, it's so nice that the board decided to do a mail-in ballot. I mean, that's just so convenient. And like you said, it's just going to reach so many more people. And there aren't those typical barriers,
Absolutely.
And there's some people, it always amazes me, I will say personally, it amazes me when people don't make the decision to not vote, just because it's such a privilege and a blessing in this country to do that. And I learned this very quickly when I first started Access TV. Filming the school board and the government meetings. And local government and local issues affect us so much more quickly than on the national level. Not that the national level is not important, but if we cannot support and take care of our own community, I mean, it's taking care of our own, and it's investing in our future and in our young people. And times have changed. Like you had mentioned earlier in our conversation, it's so different from when we were growing up, but. And we didn't maybe have the safety concerns. And, I didn't grow up in Kansas, so I didn't grow up in Tornado Alley. But, it just totally makes sense. Why would we not have tornado shelters? I mean, we are in Tornado Alley. I mean, since I have lived here, the devastation, in the different areas surrounding our community has been, very shocking, very surprising. And so that and then the all-day kindergarten, Again, I keep on repeating myself, but when you stated the number of, and just in Kansas, and how we're one of the few that are not participating, why would we not? We want our kids to be prepared. We want them to have that extra, you know, everything, all the tools, as they say in their tool belt, or toolbox, if you will, you know, to be prepared to help better them for their our lives, because they're our future, whether they stay in our community or go away. So to me, this just seems like planting seed in our future, you know.
And I think too that, I think the last number I saw was there 85 to 90% of all the students attending school, kindergarten students in Kansas, have access to all-day kindergarten. Okay?
Wow.
And that means we're one of the few 10 to 15% of our students. Our students account for the other 10 to 15%, at least our largest share of them, because we're the largest district that doesn't offer it. And so from that standpoint, I believe it places our students at a tremendous disadvantage.
Do you know when the trend actually started for all-day kindergarten?
Oh gosh, it's been going on. And it's interesting because the state of Kansas, even though a lot of school districts have gone with all-day K, the state of Kansas still only pays for half a day of kindergarten. And I know we've been lobbying the legislature for years, 15 or 20 years, about the need to fund all-day kindergarten. And so it was kind of refreshing that Governor came out and included that in his budget proposal. So it's been there for quite some time. But it is important, and you know, not to fault the governor in any way, shape, or form, but really the state does need to step up and fund a full day of kindergarten. You know, it is so important that 273 of the 286 districts are offering it, and they're basically doing it on their own dime. They're paying for it themselves, even though the state of Kansas doesn't fund it. So doesn't fund it fully anyway. So from that standpoint, I mean, it's extremely important that the state step up and fund it. And from our standpoint, it's going to be important that we have the facilities to accommodate it. Definitely.
Well, again, I just can't imagine why anyone would not vote yes.
Right. Well, and I tell you what, and they're going to start, patrons will start receiving a lot of information here in the very short order. The flyer that you mentioned was a general mailer that showed up, I believe, in folks' mailboxes last week, which lays out the plan and the proposed solution and what we hope to accomplish and what will be on the bond issue. But really, beginning now until April, there's going to be a lot of information circulating in the community. A lot of it from the school district. We may have some from a community-based group in support of this. So I think folks will have an opportunity to receive a lot of information. Of course, all the information of all the meetings that we've held, the plans that we have, all they have to do is go to www.usd305.com and click on bond issue or bond in the left-hand corner, and it will open up a site where they can have access to all the information if they want to find out more about it. So, and then of course they can email me. And I would be more than happy to visit with them. If there's any folks in the community who would want me to come to their community meeting or their group, their civic group, any organization at all, just contact me. I'll be more than happy to come out and make a presentation and talk a little bit about the bond issue. But my email address is bill.hall@usd305.com. But I'll be more than happy to come out and share this information with anyone.
So, okay, I know we talked about this early on, but I do have to ask, because I find it to be very intriguing. What is it that just made you want to be a superintendent?
Oh, well, that's interesting. Actually, I tell you what, and part of, I visit schools all the time, I go to activities all the time. The downside of district administration is I don't have the daily contact with students. So part of being out in the schools, it gives me that contact that I really absolutely missed being a teacher. And each time that you kind of move up the administrative ladder, you get further and further away from students. You know, I thoroughly enjoyed being a teacher and having that daily interaction with kids. As a building administrator, I still had that, but not to the degree as a teacher. And then I moved to the district ranks very little, so I had to create opportunities to do that. But I think probably more so than anything else, I saw the opportunity to make decisions and to move forward with programs that had a large impact on many more students. And again, even though I missed the daily contact, I feel like I can be effective in terms of providing opportunities for students at the district level. And really, I mean, it goes the whole gambit from kindergarten kids all the way through high school. So it's very satisfying, and just the opportunity to connect with kids and the community as well, and create partnerships in support of the school district. I really thoroughly enjoy that.
Well, and the reason that I asked, I know it seems a little backwards, because it probably would have been more appropriate at the beginning, yes. But I say that just because, you know, they say the camera does this and that, and we won't even go into the whole what it adds to you thing. But I will tell you, you know, in my opinion anyway, the camera definitely picks up passion, enthusiasm, and I so get that from you. You thoroughly
you.
love what you do, you love the kids, you believe in the district, and it just, you can't, in my opinion, you just cannot fake that. And that's why I felt so compelled to ask
Thank
you,
you.
because I really just get that. And again, it means a lot to see you. I've seen you at all kinds of events, and that just, and you're engaged. I remember, in fact, and I do think it was at my daughter's school, I remember seeing you, I don't even remember what age group you were reading, but just, you know, just sitting down, just reading to the kids on the floor, not in a chair, being comfortable. You were sitting on the floor, getting dirty, you know. Not that it was dirty, but, you know, I mean, it just, but you just can't, in my opinion, fake that. And I just think, I just hope if people, in addition to taking away the good information about why this is so important to our district, just know that it's just nice to know that the superintendent at USD 305 has such passion and conviction about our schools. Because, I mean, you know, they say this about churches and leaders all the time. I mean, you can tell the attitude of the organization by the leader. And so I just hope people know what good hands they're in, because you really love what you're doing. You love 305 and you love the kids. And you just can't fake that. And I'm just so glad
Well, I appreciate that,
you have
Marty.
such conviction. It's awesome.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I tell you what, it's fun. You know, I mean, folks, when they get up in the morning and they go to work, it shouldn't be more like work. It should be more like fun. And I'm passionate about what I do. I believe in kids. And you know, sometimes it's so easy to get away from what's important in life. And with my passion, I believe in kids and I believe in teachers, and so I do everything I can to make that happen. But I appreciate you saying that. Thank you very much.
It's true. And again, and I know the people watching will see that. And again, I know you know at Access, and I always joke and say, well, we're not media, we're a form of media, whatever. But and I don't mean to make light of that, but it's just, you know, this point of the program is to highlight, you know, USD 305, and this very important bond issue. But it's just so awesome to know that you're coming on and sharing with the community just the importance of this issue and just how it's going to help our students, help our community. And
well, what really makes me feel good too, though, and I said this when I interviewed for the position, when I shared it with the board, but I have a goal that when I'm in the community, when I'm at a store, when I'm in a school, that a student should be able to know who I am. You know, I think that's so important. I mean, they go to school for a big part of their life, you know, and they should know who the person is that's making decisions that impact them. So, and that doesn't matter if it's a first grader, a second grader, or a sophomore in high school. You know, when I'm in the building, they should know who I am. I shouldn't be, you know, they shouldn't be saying to their teacher, who's that guy? You know, they should know that, oh, that's Mr. Hall, he's our superintendent. They should know that. And so that I endeavor to make sure that the kids know who I am and that I care about what they do, because that's important.
Well, so. It definitely translates and is very apparent.
Well,
so we're just so grateful to have you.
Well, thank you.
Well, and thank you so much for coming on.
Well,
and real quickly, though, tell me, is there anything about the bond issue that we didn't mention that you want to make sure is clear to the people that are watching?
No, I think we've touched about everything. What I really want to encourage everyone to do is please get engaged. This is an important issue for the future of our school district and the future of our community. And it's just so simple. All you have to do is just register and the ballot will come to you.
Yes.
And they just have to fill it out and send it back in. So please get engaged. Don't be on the sideline on this one. This is extremely important.
Yes.
Be part of the process. If they have any questions, please call. Please call or email me. We'll be more than happy to get them whatever information they would like to have. But I just want to encourage everyone to be part of the process. Don't sit on the sidelines on this one. This is too important.
Very, very well said, and could not agree more. And again, what is the date that we vote that they have to have their ballots filled out by?
Noon on April 8th, the ballots have to be in the county clerk's office. And
Okay.
so they can put them in the mail, but if they don't get them mailed by the 3rd or the 4th, they might want to just walk them into the county clerk's office. But first things first, get registered. They have to get registered by March 7th.
March 7th, very important date. So, well, thank you, Superintendent Mr. Hall, for coming.
I appreciate
that. Don't be shy. You know, I know we have lots of things to talk about, and you know, 305 is a wonderful district, and yes, I'm biased. My daughter is in 305, but you know.
Well, and I think most folks will tell you one thing I am not is shy. A lot of things, but one thing I'm not is shy. So I always love talking about the good things happening in our school district because we have so many brilliant kids.
Yes, we do.
So many outstanding teachers and leaders.
Yes.
We're just fortunate to have what we have here.
We are.
Anytime you want me to come in and brag about the school district, I'll do that.
Well, good. Well, okay, and so you all are my witness, so we heard him here first. But thank you so much for coming on the program.
Marnie, I appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you so much for watching.